let's dive right in. We're going to travel back to 8th century Japan to talk about one of the most important books in its entire history, the Nihon Shoki. But here's the thing. This isn't just some old book. It's the story a nation wrote to prove its very existence to a very big, very dangerous world.
Japan Deep Dive Report Yukoso. A very warm welcome to everyone joining our deep dive today.
So let's just start with this one big question. Why on earth would a country, an imperial court, pour decades of resources and manpower into writing a history book? Well, for Japan back in the 8th century, the answer was actually pretty simple, and it came down to just one word: survival.
And that brings us to our first major point. The Nihon Shoki wasn't a story Japan was telling itself. No, this was a formal, state-sponsored history written for an international audience. Think of it as a calculated piece of diplomacy, all written in the language of power.
To really get why this was so critical, you have to picture the world at the time. You had the Tang Dynasty in China, which was the undisputed superpower of East Asia. Right next door, the Korean Peninsula was in total chaos. And from the continent, Japan looked, well, it looked pretty small and maybe a little unstable. So to be taken seriously, to not just be seen as another little state that pays tribute, the Japanese court had to prove itself. They needed a history that showed their imperial line was ancient, powerful, and chosen by the gods. This book was meant to be that proof.
So you decide you need a history book that can stand on the world stage. How do you do it? Well, it's not something you knock out over a long weekend. This was a massive, state-funded undertaking that literally spanned generations.
And this timeline just puts the scale of it all into perspective. It kicks off way back in the 680s, when Emperor Tenmu orders it to be made. A dream team is assembled, led by a prince and a dozen of the best officials. And then for 40 years, that's right, 4 decades, they worked. They gathered sources, they debated, they edited. Finally, long after the emperor who started the whole thing was gone, the massive 30-volume work was presented to the court in 720. 40 years. Just let that sink in.
And they didn't just make things up. You have to appreciate the sheer scale of the research. They pulled from everything they could get their hands on: official court records, old myths passed down for generations, government paperwork, stories about how famous temples got started, and even private notes from the most powerful families. And here's the kicker. They even used international sources, like records from the Kingdom of Baekje in Korea. The whole point was to create a history so well documented, so thorough, that no foreign power could ever question it. It had to be bulletproof.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. To truly understand the Nihon Shoki, you have to compare it to its older sibling, the Kojiki, which was finished just 8 years earlier. They are the two foundational texts of Japan, but they were made for completely different audiences.
In Japan, you'll often hear these two books mentioned together with a kind of nickname, the Kiki. It's just a simple shorthand that mashes together the names Kojiki and Nihon Shoki. You can think of them as the twin pillars that hold up all of early Japanese history.
And the difference between them is like night and day. The Kojiki was for the home crowd. It reads more like a grand mythological story, designed to explain the divine origins of Japan's rulers to the people inside Japan. But the Nihon Shoki, that was for export. It was written in a strict chronological style, just like the official histories of China. And most importantly, it was written entirely in classical Chinese. So what exactly is this Kanbun, or classical Chinese? The easiest way to think about it is that it was the Latin of East Asia back in the day. It was the universal language for government, for serious academic work, for diplomacy. If you wanted to play in the big leagues, you used Kanbun. So writing the Nihon Shoki in pure Kanbun was a total power move. It was Japan sending a crystal clear message to China and Korea: hey, we speak your language, we write history by your rules, we are a sophisticated nation, and you are going to respect us.
The impact of this project was immediate, and it lasted for a very, very long time. You see, the Nihon Shoki didn't just record history. It actually started a brand new tradition of how to write history.
And get this book was so dense, so scholarly, written in that formal classical Chinese that just 1 year after it came out, the court had to set up special classes just to teach its own aristocrats what it said. Can you imagine? It took them years to get through the whole thing. This tells you right away, this was not a book for everybody. It was a high-level government document, plain and simple. The Nihon Shoki was such a success that it basically became the template. For the next 200 years, the imperial court just kept the project going, pumping out 5 more official histories. Each new book would pick up right where the last one left off. Together, this collection is known as the Rikkokoshi,
or the 6 national histories, and they make up the official record of Japan, from the age of the gods all the way up to the year 887.
But the story doesn't end in the 10th century. Not even close. And this is where the legacy of the Nihon Shoki gets truly mind-bending. Because after that 6th history book, the official project just stopped. But the ambition behind it, that never really went away.
Now take a look at this number, 980. What do you suppose that represents? It's not a date, it's an amount of time.
That number is the 980-year gap in the official histories from where the last book ended in 887 all the way to the end of the feudal era in 1867. So in the modern era, scholars at the University of Tokyo started a massive project called the Dai Nihon Shiryo to fill that gap. And the incredible part is, that project is still going on today. So in a very real way, the National History Project that Emperor Tenmu started over 1,300 years ago never really stopped.
Which brings us to a final thought. The Nihon Shoki was a story written with a clear purpose, to project power and legitimacy onto the world stage. It's a fantastic reminder that history is never just a neutral list of facts. It's a narrative. It's crafted by someone, for someone. So the question we're all left with is, whenever we read an official history, whose story are we truly being told? And, maybe even more importantly, what stories are being left out?